Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sterling Live. This is Sterling's live series. We do it every week, every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern across LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Super excited to have you all here today. My name is Caitlin Brower. I am Sterling's social media manager, and today I am joined by Katie Zwetzig. She is our Executive Director of Sterling Volunteers, and today we are going to be discussing volunteerism amid the pandemic. So, Katie, thank you so much for joining me today. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you, Caitlin, and happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. So I'm Katie Zwetzig. I'm Executive Director of Sterling Volunteers, which is the nonprofit or the division within Sterling that services nonprofits. So we rolled out in about 2013. We're the only screening provider that services nonprofits 100%. So we have a platform specific and service delivery model for that.
Awesome. That's great. And it's truly, I love talking about Sterling Volunteers, and I'm happy that, we're talking about this topic today. So it's really great for our audience to get a better understanding of that. So thank you for introducing yourself and giving a little bit more around Sterling Volunteers. And as Katie said too, we are in the week of Thanksgiving for many of our audience and people listening right now. So we do want to take the time to say happy Thanksgiving. And this is such a proper topic for this week. So let's go ahead and get into it. If you have questions at any time during the broadcast across Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, go ahead and put your questions in the comment section and I will field them towards Katie. So I want to start with talking about building trust and safety, because this is something that is very important for Sterling, across our entire organization, and really narrowing down into the volunteer sector. So for nonprofit organizations, the people who serve their mission, that's their greatest asset for them. So how can these organizations build trust and safety to ensure that these volunteers can be successful in their missions?
Yeah, well, Caitlin, it's a great question, and certainly one that gets raised a lot by nonprofits in some conversation around. It's interesting because demand is up for these services. If you watched CBS Sunday Morning, for instance, you saw the long lines at San Antonio Food Bank, for instance. And so, on the demand side, it's there, and then also the volunteers are volunteering. And so most of our organizations that we work with are leaning on more volunteers due to staff turnover and layoffs. And that's really important. And so, as a foundation, I would say there's research around volunteer programs and just having a very, very strong engagement of those volunteers that the Points of Light did back in 2009 for their Service Enterprise Initiative. And so those organizations that have a strong volunteer engagement program have more adaptable, sustainable, capable of going to scale within their volunteer programs. And so, if I think about it and I take a step back, there's never been a better time to really have a good engagement program. So for your first question, as far as safety, certainly volunteers aren't physically interacting as much. And so that inherently there's that level of trust and safety that you normally might have because you're face to face or neck and neck or shoulder to shoulder with them. So it does require some additional work by the organization and volunteers and volunteer managers. But the one thing that hasn't changed is that mission focus. So what I'm seeing is that the most successful volunteer organizations during this time are still mission focused. They haven't, gone completely away from that mission, and it's really focusing on that and focusing on how they make volunteering accessible for a diverse set of volunteers whose comfort levels, vary and depending on their circumstances and situations. So first off, what we see is that organizations that focus on their policies and procedures and share them up front with volunteers that are coming in, like, are you going to do temperature checks when they come in?
Right.
What are the rules for social distancing? What if somebody has a cough and so forth? What do you do in those situations? And then, the business related aspects of that. How do I give my volunteer remote access and do it securely? And what does that look like if I need, to manage my risk in a different way for both volunteers that are on site and off site? So we've seen, by and large, most nonprofits are putting these really strict or robust policies and procedures, I should say, in place, and then making sure that they're communicating those, and that communication,
that's important.
Should be two-way,
Yeah, the communication part of it is definitely important. Are there any other specific measurements that you've seen put into place to make sure that these volunteers are safe?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, people start with the training program, for instance, and there's been some platforms that have come out that have helped putting training in. How do you do role playing if you're mentoring, virtually now? What does that look like? Can you do role playing? And so I think some of those solutions, have been really, really well received from a training and onboarding. And I think the onboarding, I've also seen that change slightly. I don't have a chance as a volunteer manager to meet somebody face to face.
Right.
So maybe I have to interview them a little bit more. Maybe I need to rely on references. And so that onboarding and making sure that they know what their responsibilities are is important.
Yeah, no, it's definitely important for sure. So given this shift, with, volunteerism, it's truly important to still keep our volunteers engaged. So have you seen any specific enhancements when it comes to volunteer engagement?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really impressed, and I love reading the stories about how people have done like a plan B on this. And so, I think like Meals on Wheels. So think about them nationally. So they still need to deliver a physical meal, right? So they'll have a volunteer deliver that, but then they're utilizing volunteers from anywhere to call into those recipients of the meals. One of our clients first, who works with robotics, they run most of the robotics and STEM programs within the schools. They pivoted very quickly and built out 3 different platforms, one for kiddos to showcase their programs and some of their robotics and STEM things that they put together. They actually changed their championship, which has been face-to-face, and did that remotely. And that allowed them to not only be in the US and Canada, but also to go worldwide with that. So some people have taken it, really taken advantage of this remote volunteering.
Yeah, that's great. And those are some great examples. You can see the smile on my face right now. Yeah. So I do love to hear that. That's truly great. So I do want to touch on this topic just a little, briefly. It doesn't have to be too much. So I do want to talk about recruitment for volunteers, because, nonprofits need our help. Volunteers really want to help and contribute. So it's really talking about like, how do they actually get recruited? So I was curious, and I'm sure our audience is too, what are the most common ways that we see organizations recruit volunteers?
Yeah, so I would say that I don't think this has changed that much. We did a survey last year, and our research report showed that most volunteers found opportunities through an online system like a volunteer match or All for Good, which is Points of Light. They've now called it Engage, or through friends. And so by and large, that they're still doing it that way. But we do hear from our clients that more and more volunteers are calling in to help out and just calling directly.
Yeah, that's great. And is there any, are there any ways that like commonly like don't work really from a recruitment standpoint?
Well, I think, years ago, people used to have like, okay, come and join us at 4:00 and learn about our organization. And I don't think that in person, obviously within COVID, but I think we're getting away from that, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, no, and that's a great shift, because we have been talking about volunteering amid, the pandemic. That's our entire topic. We've touched a little bit too, like on the virtual volunteering now. So I think that's a great segue into that overarching topic. So we're shifting to online, volunteer opportunities now more than ever, because it is safer. It is, status quo of a lot of things. So how has volunteering actually shifted to that virtual experience?
Yeah. So I kind of think about it in 2 ways. Where I'm a volunteer that used to go in face-to-face and physically, and now I'm working remotely. And then also this opportunity like First and others that have taken advantage of now, I could be a remote volunteer anywhere in the world. If I want to mentor somebody, even though I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado, I could mentor somebody in Poughkeepsie.
Right.
So I think that there are some opportunities, and some organizations have really taken advantage of both of those. As I mentioned, mentoring could be anywhere. First put together that Meals on Wheels Girl Scouts. Even though we're in Colorado, our team bought, Girl Scouts put their cookie sales online. We bought cookies from Girl Scouts of Northern California, or live feeds and classes from Georgia Aquarium. I mean, people are really, really creative.
Yeah, they really have been. And I just want to kind of like take a little mini segue here. On our Sterling Volunteers Facebook page, we are consistently sharing how, how amazing these organizations are doing and how they're shifting to, remote virtual experiences. And I know that was like a couple that you just said there, but we're sharing stuff every single day. So if our audience listening right now, if you do have the time, I'd head over to our Sterling Volunteers Facebook page and just see the great work that a lot of organizations are doing right now. So they definitely deserve a round of applause, because it is a shift that I guess not everyone was, thinking about or fully ready for, but they're doing the best that they can. So I think that's truly great. So as we look into the future, do you see virtual volunteering, staying, popular, and kind of will there be any more shifts from this virtual experience right now?
I wish the pandemic would get over, as everybody does, but no, I don't. And I think that there's some efficiencies too. I mean, just like those of us who have gone remote working, there's efficiencies built in, and some people really like it. So I do think it's here to stay, certainly for a while. I think organizations need to figure out how to make it work and use technology. But yeah, it's here to stay. The other thing I'd say is, if you get on Volunteer Match's website, I think this is a good indicator too. So one of our partners is Volunteer Match, but they have a whole list of opportunities. This morning I was on it, 701,000 volunteers needed. So there's a lot of engagement that's needed. A lot of them are social media and content writers. There was one that was a guinea pig coordinator that was remote. I mean, if you can be a guinea pig coordinator remotely, you could do more than anything, right?
Yes.
So it's fun.
No, that's great. I'm happy you pointed that out, because maybe some people do feel discouraged at this time that they can't help out given the situation. But like you said, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And Katie did mention Volunteer Match. That is one of our partners. So if you go ahead, our audience listening now, and check that out, and you could become a guinea pig coordinator. So I think that could be your next experience. No, that's truly great. So in regards to, the pandemic, COVID-19, the response to it, specifically, I think this conversation really ties into unity and how Sterling Volunteers has partnered with a lot of organizations during this time. So for example, United Way and Points of Light. I know you brought up Points of Light earlier. So can you tell us about our partnership with, these two examples? And then there's other ones as well. So.
Yeah, I think, what we tried to do is figure out where we could add value during this pandemic and see what we could do. So we offered free background checks and are still offering free background checks. And we did that through our partner network. We're the national provider for VOAD. And so with our partnership with VOAD, and they work with all of the disaster organizations, we provided background checks. And VisionLink, their platform sponsor and developer, provided the platform for free to those organizations. That was pretty awesome.
That's amazing.
And we also rolled out those free background checks through the volunteer centers that are largely Points of Light service centers and United Way volunteer centers. So that's been really fun.
Yeah, no, it's, these past couple of months, while it's been much uncertainty, I've been always pleased to see, what Sterling Volunteers has been able to do, giving back, providing support. We always say from a Sterling standpoint that we're here to help. And these are just prime examples of how we've gone out there and tried to help many organizations. So thank you for sharing those examples. So as we kind of, wrap up, the conversation, I do have one final topic I do want to cover, and it makes so much sense given that we are in Thanksgiving week for a lot of our viewers right now. And it's just talking about, community gratitude. So looking at examples of kindness and making sure, we're serving communities right now that need immediate needs. So for example, like a hunger relief program, things like that. So can you provide our audience right now with some examples of kindness and serving communities that really do have those immediate needs right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot out there, and I'd love to learn, more about them. But yeah, like Y Maryland and United Healthcare worked with Baltimore Ravens player Willie Snead and provided meals. VOMO, one of our partners, launched a Be a Neighbor campaign. I thought that what Nextdoor did, if you're part of a homeowners association across the U.S., then you might have that Nextdoor app. But that allowed for peer-to-peer volunteering and to check in on the lady next door that might be a shut-in. people have heard about, there's a kid, I call him a kid because he's much younger than I am, that hasn't even graduated from Yale, named Liam Elkine. People may have read about him. He started delivering meals and cards and so forth in New York. Friends asked if they could help. He started a nonprofit in March or April, Invisible Hands, 12,000 volunteers.
Wow.
So just amazing stuff and collaborations between businesses and school districts, and it's really fun to read about.
Yeah, and those examples are truly inspiring too. And I hope everyone that's watching right now, you get that little light of inspiration and you look for ways to give back, especially during this time, dealing with the pandemic, but also as we move into the holiday season across, many parts of the world right now. So thank you for providing those examples. They inspired me 100%. So I'm going to take a step back here right now. So everyone that is watching across Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, if you do have any questions for Katie, please go ahead in the comment section and ask away. She's a bundle of knowledge right there. So she's definitely got some great answers for you. So if you do have questions, please submit them now. And Katie, I just wanted to wrap up with some final thoughts from you. This is a great discussion today, by the way. I truly loved it.
Yeah, I guess I'm just so intrigued by, the Plan Bs that were put in place by nonprofits and just the way communities have come together. Another great example is a lot of the Boys and Girls Clubs are working with the food banks locally and delivering meals together. So there's just been such great collaboration that I think is fabulous.
Mm-hmm. No, that was great. So it looks as if at this time we don't have any questions. So we will go ahead and wrap up the show. But Katie, thank you so much for joining me today for this episode of Sterling Live. It was, a very timely discussion. Thanksgiving is on Thursday for those who celebrate. So thank you so much for joining me and sharing so much light into volunteerism, shifting the volunteerism right now and still ways that you can go out and you can be a part of your community and give back. So I truly thought it was great. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Caitlin.
And I just wanted to remind our audience that we do go live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern across Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we hope we can catch you next week. And as we said earlier, for those celebrating, have a wonderful Thanksgiving this week. We hope you have a great time with family, friends, and stay safe out there. So thank you again for joining me, Katie, and thank you all for joining us. So thank you and goodbye.
Thanks.